What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It's a brand new episode of Liam Picks Fights. I'm excited, guys. We're talking about UFC Vegas 62, and while it's not the greatest card on paper, it does represent a fight card, something to talk about on a Saturday night. It's been a while since we've had consistent nights of fights. We're going to get a very good pay-per-view offering next week, so that's enough to pull me through what otherwise is a pretty tepid fight night offering, but I think we got some good fights. I think we've got some interesting prospects. We got some good fighters. So I'm excited to break it all down, to talk with you guys. Night owls, over 20 people rocking with us live. It's already 2:30 in the morning, but guys, I got a lot of energy. I'm so fired up. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to break down these fights, and I can see that you guys are as well. So sharpest chat in the game. I appreciate you guys all for being here. Comments are already blowing up when I got in here. So thank you guys so much. I'm really excited to talk about these fights. Just want to mention off the top, I got two sponsors that help bring this show to the air every week, and we're going to talk about the odds through Oddsjam. So we'll have plenty of opportunities to mention them as we go along here. And also Prize Picks, guys, simplest game in all of DFS. If you guys are looking to get involved in MMA, college football, NFL, MLB, they got everything. Prop projections. It's the simplest game to play. If you use my promo code Liam, it'll help me out, and they'll deposit match you 100% up to $100. So everybody, peace, love, and chicken grease. Wanted to mention that off the top. But we got a whole card to break down. So let's get it started with the very first fight of the night. And this is a real outlier, in terms of UFC products. It's not a great, you know, fight, truthfully, right? We got Mike Jackson on the one hand. He's kind of the UFC experiment with CM Punk's leftovers, remnants that are still in the UFC. Now, granted, I did tell people on this show that I did not endorse a bet on Dean Barry, and I'm as Irish as could be. I'm biased. I'll go to bat for the guy. You see, I got the notorious book back here, but I'm telling you guys, I watched the Dean Barry footage. He was giving his back to a bunch of low-level guys. He really wasn't very impressive. And honestly, he was diddy bopping this guy Mike Jackson in the boxing in the early going in that fight. He had him hurt. He had him rocked, landed a couple big shots. Mike Jackson's defense was really lacking in that fight. I felt like he did a lot of like head pullbacks and things like that. He was really putting himself at risk. And he did a decent enough job of countering. He was throwing back a couple shots as he was pulling his head away, but it just felt to me like somebody like Pete Rodriguez, who on short notice got in there and threw hands with Jack Della and landed some crisp body shots and put a couple good left hooks on him, and frankly took a lot of damage in that fight. He was willing to take a lot of really hard, clean punches to the face, and I don't know that that's a good long-term strategy, but it did show me that he's a tough guy, and he could get in a fight with a real, tough, gritty, proven fighter. And I think Jack Della represents something like that. And, on the other hand, Dean Barry was not long for the organization. That was his only bout. CM Punk, not long for the organization. He's gone. Mickey Gall, not long for the organization. He's gone. So really, I think that Mike Jackson is the last piece of the puzzle. I think he's gone after this weekend, unfortunately. I think Pete Rodriguez is a little bit more about that life. I'm not endorsing a bet on Pete Rodriguez. The lines are crazy. They're out of control. But it's just because you have one guy who really seems like he's a dangerous, young fighter who could still get in a fight and really knock somebody's block off. And then Mike Jackson, who looks like he's, a little bit more play acting, fighting. And I don't say that to be disparaging. I just mean, it's some combination of his age, his level of development, his level of experience all together. It just doesn't come across like a normal UFC fighter. Even when he was on top in certain dominant positions, he was doing a lot of upright posture. He almost got triangled by CM Punk at one point. Like, there was just a couple of red flags I saw. The infrequency of competition, also a red flag for me. I'm sure that the UFC is not eager to offer him fights, but this is another opportunity for him to fight somebody who's 4-1, like Dean Barry was. But I think that Pete Rodriguez is probably going to roll here. He's probably going to knock him out in the first round. If I had to make a prediction, that's what the lines are indicating as well. But for me, this is probably just a pass fight. I think it's going to end under 1.5 rounds, but all the numbers are pretty juiced out for whatever it is worth. And let me just pull up the Oddsjam current odds, and we will see what the best available prices are. But I think you're going to be looking at a minus 700 or so. And yeah, that's exactly what it is. Minus 700 on Pete Rodriguez, and you've got plus 525 on the comeback. That's a Resorts World number for Mike Jackson, plus 525. It seems like the market's really settled out around minus 700, plus 500 on either side. You give or take 25 cents in either direction there, but it's a fight for me that's pretty lopsided in terms of upside. I think the UFC would prefer to work with somebody like Pete Rodriguez long term, and I think that it's been a nice run, a nice experiment. But I do think that this is the end of the road for Mike Jackson here personally. So wishing him the best of luck. But we can move to the next fight here. We got CJ Vergara and Tatsuro Taira. Now this is a fight I'm excited to talk about. I'm kind of surprised that this fight is so early in the card because I think that this is a really compelling matchup on paper. But we've got Tatsuro Taira. He's a guy that I've been very high on. I did come on this show and say that I thought he was going to have a lot of grappling success in his last bout, and that came to fruition. I thought that for a 22-year-old, he showed tremendous poise. He was doing a great job of, recovering when he lost position. I think his opponent took him completely off guard by pursuing offensive takedowns right off the rip in that fight. When you would have expected that Taira was going to be the aggressor in terms of the grappling. And he was able to respond to that well. He was able to look for switches. He was able to look for, reversals, sweeps, deep half guard situations. It seemed to me like he has a pretty complex system for grappling. And I also just love his transitions. He was doing things that are extremely high level from the full guard straight to the back. He's very flexible. He's very dynamic in his grappling. He's constantly looking for the choke. And, I watched a lot of his regional footage as well. I have, over 15 pages of notes for this fight on the Tatsuro Taira side and the Vergara side combined. And, Vergara, he's missed weight for a number of UFC bouts. He's missed weight for a number of bouts overall. He really seems like he's destined to move up to this bantamweight division. But, granted, his submission loss that occurred almost instantly in the first round was at the 135-pound class. So I do think that he had a little bit of problems dealing with the size, the physicality at 135. He wanted to get down to 125 where he could be bigger, stronger, more physical. But I think if you guys saw the face-offs, it did look to me like Taira was just as big as he is. Maybe not quite the same, thickness in the shoulders, but for me, I thought that there was a big skill gap in terms of the grappling here. Vergara has given up, really dangerous positions in a number of fights. He's given up his back. He's given up pretty easy takedowns, without offering a tremendous amount of resistance. I think the number one thing Taira has to be worried about here is the knees to the body in the clinch. That's probably the best weapon from Vergara. He also has pretty good punching, but it's just he's a kill or be killed kind of fighter. He's always putting himself at risk. He's always walking into the pocket. I've seen him drop many times regionally in the UFC. He's been hit and hurt cleanly as well. And he's only been here for a short time. If you guys listen to the, commentary from the Contender series, they were saying Mick Maynard liked this guy and wanted to bring him in because, he's got the kind of style where, it's always going to be volatile. It's always going to be a crazy fight. It's always going to be fun. It's always going to be wild. And he was like, and you don't get that by having great defense and by being super technical. He's like, you get that by, being violent and aggressive and coming forward and trying to make it a fight. But I think that that's going to open up counter takedowns. I think that's going to open up the grappling, the, back takes, the slickness from Tatsuro Taira. And I also think that, based on what I've seen, Vergara is susceptible to getting leg kicked. He's susceptible to getting hit with straight right hands down the middle from fast punchers. And I think that Taira is going to have both those opportunities. I think he can mix in head kicks. I think he can keep the body. I think he's fast getting in and out of the pocket. And I think that if he mixes in the grappling here, that is his path of least resistance. So for me, I think that the movement on the sub round one is sharp. I had been eyeing it myself at the 8-1 number, and I figured a square book was going to open it up something better. And, now it's been bet down on Bet Online from plus 800 to plus 575. I think that there's value on Tatsuro Taira to win the fight by submission. I think there's value on him to win the fight inside the distance. And I think that there may be value on his money line. Granted, I got in at an earlier price, but I think that there still may be some value to be had on the line. I respect CJ Vergara. I think he can win other UFC fights, but I think that Tatsuro Taira projects higher. I think that he has more paths to victory here. I think that Vergara can be hit and be hurt and be finished. I think he's shown that he can lose close decisions. He can win close decisions. He can lose close decisions as well. And Tatsuro Taira, he got a dominant 30-26, and that was his first fight in the United States. That was his first fight in the organization. So for me, I really liked everything that I saw from Tatsuro Taira on the tape in his preparation, and I think that he is going to be a player, potentially moving forward. I think they're going to continue this slower build where they try and give him winnable but difficult matchups, get him some more experience, get him some more cage time. I think he's going to be hungry for the finish here. He was pursuing it aggressively last time. That's why he was able to get a 30-26 on two judges' scorecards. He was going for finishing maneuvers. He was looking for chokes. He was looking for finishing positions. He was also doing damage. He was looking for elbows. He was looking for punches from the back, as well as standing. He dropped him and rocked him with a right hand and knocked him over. So for all those reasons, I think that Tatsuro Taira is a dangerous fighter. I think he's a dynamic fighter. I think he's going to make extreme improvements fight over fight. And so for all those reasons, I like Tatsuro Taira this weekend to get the job done and probably inside the distance, potentially by knockout or submission. So the next fight on the card is one that I don't have the strongest opinion on, so we can move through this one just a little bit quicker. I want to mention, as we move off that last fight, shout out to our partners at Oddsjam. Tatsuro Taira, best available price, minus 250 right now. That's on multiple books, but PointsBet is the one that they're pointing out. I think that there's a couple other books that are still holding that minus 250 number. A lot of books have moved to minus 260, minus 265. A couple of the Sharp Vegas books are hanging around that minus 260 number as well. So for me, this is a great fight, a great opportunity. I'm seeing plus 231 as the best comeback on CJ Vergara. That is at Pinnacle Sportsbook. So right now, one of the sharper sports books out there is offering the best line on CJ Vergara for whatever that is worth. Now, the next fight on the card here, we'll drop the odds off the top. We've got Piera Rodriguez, best available odds, minus 159 on Pinnacle Sportsbook. The comeback on Sam Hughes, plus 140 as an underdog here. And Sam Hughes is coming off 2 underdog wins. I actually bet her when she lost as a big underdog against Luana Pinheiro. Wasn't a big bet for me there, but I think that kind of spooked me off playing Sam Hughes moving forward. Then the next bet that I had in a Sam Hughes fight was 1.5 units to win 1 unit on Elise Reed. Boy, that bet aged like milk, huh? I thought that on the feet, Elise Reed was going to get the job done there. I thought she was going to be a little more crisp, a little bit better with her distance striking, her mixing up of the kicks, but she got taken down pretty relentlessly there. And, my initial gut lean in this fight was Piera Rodriguez was going to get the win. Felt like she was a little more physical, felt like she had a little bit more long-term upside. But then, for me, I went back and rewatched the fight with Kay Hansen, and there was some dicey moments. She showed good balance on a couple of those inside trip attempts, but really she put herself in danger. She did get taken down a few times. She made a few positional mistakes that could have cost her big time in that fight. So all of those are some problems that I have with the Piera Rodriguez side here. Not to say that, I don't think she's a good fighter. I don't think she has talent. I don't think she can improve, any of those things. I just have, some reservations about laying chalk with her based on what I know right now, which is that, she did seem like she was looking to take a couple breaks in the Kay Hansen fight as well, take a couple of moments of reprieve, some deep breaths, recover. Maybe Sam Hughes doesn't give her those windows of recovery, and that could be to her ultimate benefit here. So I think whichever lady is able to get the takedowns, is able to get on top, is probably going to find the win here. I don't know who that's going to be. I lean slightly towards Piera Rodriguez, but I'm not confident enough to lay the chalk here. You're going to hear me say that a lot on this card, but it's a lot of unreliable fighters. And, one of the things I'm trying to avoid is getting out over my skis on fighters that I don't think I can rely on. If I don't think that they can cover all their bases, if they can't cover the cardio, if they can't cover the striking, if they can't cover the grappling, I'm really looking for somebody who can cover a lot of bases for me, who can win a decision, who can win, by multiple methods, who shows danger and paths to victory inside the distance as well. These are the kind of things that I look for. in my betting spots. And, this is just a harder fight for me to get a read on. I feel like it's going to be a split decision territory unless one of these ladies gasses out really badly. I don't think either one of them is just an out and out quitter. I don't know that one of them is head and shoulders above the other. So I feel like we could really get a tit for tat, very close decision here. The next fight on the card is one that, I'm more excited about having looked into it, right? We got my man, Joanderson Brito. And I got to give a shout out to this guy every time I talk about him on the show. If you guys have watched the show for a while, I took some hate. I took some grief in my comment section and my live streams because I was saying that I thought Joanderson Brito was a very live underdog against Andre Fili. And everybody was telling me Andre Fili is my most confident parlay of the card. I'm putting him in all my parlays. I was like, I would encourage you not to do that. And 1 minute into that fight, people learned why. This guy, Joanderson Brito's got power in his hands. He can really swing. I bet him against, my goodness, Bill Algeo in his fight before that. And that was a fight where I felt like, Bill Algeo, man, he just did a really good job of standing up to the grappling pressure, standing up to the back take, standing up to the fact that this guy was going to bring it and throw some heavy shots and hit him with some body shots. And, he showed off his durability there. He showed off his toughness. He showed off his grit, and he showed off his cardio. And that was a fight where, Brito's making that UFC debut. Sometimes we see people have jitters, have, pacing issues. And this is a guy who's coming off a lot of finishes on the regional scene. So then we see him go out in this next fight, and what happens? He instant boinks him, kills him in the first round. Hasn't really happened to Fili a lot. So, I think that speaks to what he's capable of. And then you see how that MMA math works. Andre Fili comes and gets that dub back over Bill Algeo. So 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4 in MMA. But what I'll tell you is this, I think that in this fight, Joanderson Brito, I think he's going to have a sizable grappling edge. I'm looking at the fact that he's a -400 favorite in the spot. His opponent is 0-2 to the submission career. He's 5-1 to the submission career, and he's +330 to win the fight by submission. It just doesn't really make sense to me. And, I think that people, they look at the fact that Bill Algeo, who hasn't been submitted, not by Andre Fili on his back, not since Shane Burgos in the CFFC, way back in the day, has Bill Algeo been submitted. He's a black belt, and he's very, very good defensively. He's had people in really compromising positions. He doesn't quit. He's a gamer. He's very, very tough, and he's got, defensive fundamentals in terms of hand positioning and hand fighting. He's very, very difficult to put away. So I think that the fact that Brito wasn't able to out-grapple him and put him away doesn't mean that he's not going to be able to do it to this guy who's taking the fight on a couple weeks short notice, who's coming in here, really having faced a much lower level of competition than who Brito's been fighting recently. And I do think that he shows some promise, some upside. He's got some dynamic offense on the feet. I just saw so many easy takedowns being given up to low-level fighters on the regional scene, and that tells me that if Brito wants takedowns here, he's going to get them. I think he's going to be more physical. I think he's going to be able to get takedowns when he wants them, and if that's the case, I think his grappling edge will be put to good use here. I'm going to have to probably take a shot on Brito to win the fight by submission. It's the spot that stood out to me on this particular matchup. I don't look to play every juiced up favorite, but sometimes I like to look for these mispriced props. I'm a grappling head, so I like to prefer those submission props when I find them. If I find a good knockout angle, not afraid to take that as well. But for me, I feel like there might be some value on that submission prop. They're pricing him to win inside the distance as about a 65% probability. They're capping him to win the fight at about an 80% probability. And yet they're saying that the knockout is, I think 40 some odd percent. And the submission is going to happen very infrequently, 20%, something like. Man, I don't necessarily buy that at all. This other guy seems pretty tough. He seems like he's willing to get hit with a couple shots, and he's been submitted pretty easily in a couple of spots. He got armbarred as well as a back take, rear naked choke. So, yeah, I just feel like there's a lot of openings there. Brito can exploit them, and when you're taking a fight like this on short notice and you start to gas out, I think it's a little bit more likely that you get submitted than you just get knocked out cold here. But Brito can swing hammer. So if the bet crashes on Brito, just knocking the guy senseless, hey, no skin off my nose, but I think that the submission prop here might be a play for me. Moving forward, I kind of like Brito just as a prospect, and as long as he's undervalued by the market, I'll continue to invest. And in this spot, he's clearly valued by the market on the money line, but I feel like that submission equity might be underpriced. Now, the odds, according to Oddsjam here, have minus 375, the best available money line price on Joanderson Brito. And you're looking at a plus 305 comeback on his opponent, Lucas Alexander here, UFC debutant. And that price can be found on Pinnacle Sportsbook. So once again, a little bit of that sketchy feeling, when you see Pinnacle Sportsbook holding that best underdog price. Want to shout out to the chat real quick. A lot of great heads, constant visitors in here. And, Moyes, Team Insomnia, shout out my brother. I sleep when the work is done. That's how I feel, brother. And, just wanted to make sure I brushed up on my tape for all these fighters, give them their due diligence and their due respect. And, coming in here excited to talk about these fights, man. It's been too long. So excited to get back to it. And shout out to the people in the chat asking some interesting questions here. Vergara missed weight, which is statistically an advantage, and more money came in on Taira. I don't agree necessarily that missing weight is an advantage, my brother. Especially in a fight like this, it's a huge percentage of your body weight to miss by 3 pounds at 125. It's a pretty big miss. It would be like missing by 5 or 6 pounds at heavyweight or light heavyweight. So for me, it was a really irresponsible miss here. It's not the first time. So I don't know that he's got a tremendous advantage from that. I also don't know that Taira has a tremendous disadvantage from that. Taira seems like he's very responsible and prepared for his weight cuts, comes in, looks sharp every time, and looks like he's ready to go off the rip as well. Looks like he's sharp from the get-go. So all of those are factors that I look for, and I feel like I've liked everything I've seen. Whereas Vergara, I think he is consistent, reliable to come forward, be aggressive, and throw. But I also think that, that oftentimes is having him absorb a lot of damage very early in his fights, and he's got to walk through fire to try and win, and that will work against a certain level of opponent. I just think that Taira happens to be a higher level of opponent. So the next fight on the card here is one that I've been kicking around, guys. I'm really not too sure what to make of this because these are two guys that I've, tried to get on the other side of or just let their fights pass me by so far in the UFC. And of course, I'm talking about Nick Maximov and Jacob Malkoun. And, I got revenge on Nick Maximov. He took my money. I bet Punahele Soriano. I thought that Puna won that fight. But I won't cry over spilled milk. I just will take the plus 350 on Andre Petroski. Represent. Worst mistake of my life. I only put $5 on Andre Petroski wins by sub in round 1 plus 2,500. Bet of the Centura, it looked like. And what stood out to me on rewatch is that there were some positional mistakes from Maximov that I feel like a guy of his caliber really shouldn't be making. No semblance of elbow control, which I feel like would have benefited him from both a wrestling standpoint and a grappling standpoint when he had Petroski trying to set up the Darce choke entry. And, he didn't turn the correct direction. He did not, try and get his hips back over the top. And really, he ended up putting himself in a no-win situation, unfortunately. Now, he's a much better grappler than I am. The guy would twist me into pretzels. Let's be clear about all that. But I'm just talking about in the heat of battle. Thought he made some positional mistakes. Honestly, it was too easy how Petroski was able to take his back there and get to the turtle position. If you guys remember, it's one of my favorite positions. It's one of my favorite moves to pull off. It makes you feel slick when you can hit it, but somebody goes for that outside, low-level single leg. They put their head on the outside of your leg, and then you shove with one hand, like a stiff arm, a Heisman stiff arm, onto the back of their head, and then hit a quick spin. And if you spin hard, they can't hold on to the leg, and then you could turn into their hips. And I try and do it all the time. It's a move that I really like. You could use it a variety of different ways to counteract people in a grappling and wrestling setting. But it really is like one of the easiest ways to take the back. You know, you bait this crappy outside low single leg, then you push their head to the mat, spin the other way, and you got the easy back take. You got the easy, entry to turtle. And, just somebody of his caliber giving up those kind of positions is a little frightening for me at this level. Also, he's not throwing a lot of volume, right? He's not going out there and landing a lot of strikes. So I feel like Maximov kind of has a small margin for error. That's why I thought he lost to Puna, despite the fact that he had some grappling success there. I'm a grappler. I'm a wrestler, right? I like all those things. I'm not a hater, but I like people that go out there to fight and that look for damage, that look for, positions where they could finish the fight. I feel like he was doing a lot of holding on and not a lot of looking to finish the fight. And that for me is the ultimate deciding factor of whether somebody's grappling is effective. Does it look like they have a chance to finish the fight? Does it look like they're setting their opponent up to finish the fight? That's what taking the back is. That's what setting up the mount is. That is where, you're dropping elbows. If you're in a position to throw ground and pound, it means you're in a real position of control. And, those are the kind of things that I like to see personally out of the fighters that I back. And so for me, neither one of these guys inspires great confidence. But upon the rewatch, Malkoun did probably get robbed against Brendan Allen. He really looked like he was getting a lot of advantageous positions in the wrestling. He did a poor job of opening up with any strikes in that fight. And he made a few really dumb mistakes. And what I mean by that isn't, he's dumb. I just mean, really strategically, boneheaded things that shoot you in the foot. Losing position with 1 minute left in the round. He did it like 3 times in the fight. That's just so hard to win a fight when the last thing that you remind the judges of before they score it each and every time is the fact that you're putting yourself to your back. And it was like he'd take him down, get the back, get to a good position, work from the turtle, get to the top side control, get to the top half guard, and then Brendan Allen would, reverse position, be on top in the full guard, and Malkoun would look like a fish again. He'd just be sitting there. So I feel like if Malkoun can do a better job of working in, a get-up game and or getting on top proactively early on, that's where this fight's going to be won and lost. And so for me, it's a really difficult fight to project out. I do kind of agree with the market that this should be priced close to a 50-50, whereas everybody else, is very bullish one way or the other. I'm not super bullish on either guy, but what I will say is that I thought that the, chain wrestling from Malkoun did impress me in the Brendan Allen fight. I do think that could be a deciding factor here, but I don't have enough confidence to back it at the small underdog odds that it is right now. Shout out to our friends at Oddsjam once again for providing these odds, but they're showing minus 121 Pinnacle Sportsbook, best available price on Nick Maximov with plus 110 as the best money line comeback on Jacob Mamba Malkoun. So if you like that Jacob Malkoun side, looks like FanDuel's giving you the best available number at that plus 110 price. Can't hate it. I've seen plus 105 as the best available price for various points in this market already. There's been a lot of correction on the Malkoun side. So it's an interesting fight. It really is. A lot of convicted people in the online community, that are on the Maximov side here, and maybe they prove to be right. American Grappling, maybe he's able to show up and show out here. But I do think that Malkoun showed off in that Brendan Allen fight that even against somebody who's tall, who's got leverage, who's got length, who's lanky, who's awkward, who knows how to grapple, he was able to get to a lot of really dominant positions. And it was a few mistakes that cost him. Cleans up a couple of those mistakes, you could be looking at a 30-27 win over Brendan Allen. So that being said, I think it's a dog or pass situation, but the odds really aren't wide enough for me. I'm not touching anything, man. I'm gonna let it go. And here's the other thing, just my one little narrative quirk here. I listened to this guy's interview And I'm talking about Maximov. Sounds just like a Diaz brother, right? So now the UFC is probably thinking to themselves, all right, if we can't get the real guys, if we can't get the real Diaz bros, let's get a Diaz-esque character that we can promote. Maybe that's what the Maximov story will turn out to be. But, wishing him luck here to get back on the horse. It stinks when you're a grappler and you go out there and you get put out in your own discipline. It's got to hurt your confidence a little bit. I do think, my man's right here. Malkoun was robbed in his last fight. So maybe he gets a little get back here. But I don't think it's going to be easy. I think it's going to be, maybe grimy split decision territory. But maybe it's catch as catch can, we'll talk about somebody else who's catch as catch can in a little bit. But I'm talking about in this fight, if there's a lot of grappling situations, a lot of grappling positions, Malkoun's really not an aggressive hunter of the submission. But I would not be surprised if we saw Maximov attempting some submissions here, looking for different positions, different entries. And I'm curious to see how the grappling plays out as a grappling head. So next up, guys, we have, catch as catch can, Victor Henry, Josh Barnett trained, coming in, taking on Raphael Assunao. And, I got to do the little victory lap here. Did end up playing the Victor Henry side against Raoni Barcelos plus 425 for 1 unit, and turned out to be one of the bigger underdogs that cashed that year. And, no hate on Raoni Barcelos. I just really was impressed by Victor Henry, what I saw from him on the regional scene and the body of work he had put together. Some guys come into the UFC and they're Pete Rodriguez and they've got 4 fights and they've never been 3 rounds and they've never done this, they've never done that. And it's really hard to evaluate, where is their talent? Are they really going to hack it at this level? What is their ceiling? What's their upside? You got to have more data. You got to have a little bit more to answer some of those questions. And, in this case, I think that we might get, some of the information that we need to answer the questions about Victor Henry. But I think we've already had it, right? And I think that he showed that he could beat UFC quality fighters outside the UFC. He's been competing at a high level. He's competed all over the world. So going to the fight capital of the world, Las Vegas, I don't think it's going to be any skin off his nose. It's not going to be the biggest show he's competed in. It's not going to be the biggest fight of his life. It's not going to be the scariest opponent he's ever taken on, with all due respect. And Raphael Assunao is a very technical operator. He's very talented. He's got good striking skills. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He can wrestle. So he's not a slouch in any position. The problem is he's just aging out of the division. He's aging out of his prime. He's aging out of his athleticism. And Victor Henry, that's not true of him. He looks as good as he's ever looked. He looks like he's much closer to his athletic prime. He looks like the much more durable fighter overall. And, I think I've heard a lot of people saying this week, Assunao, he just recently lost his durability, man. I feel like his style has always been predicated on, willingness and ability to take a shot. He had to step into the pocket to draw out a counter as the smaller guy and then fire back, with that big looping overhand right or a low kick combination or something. But he really had to draw people onto him and try and use a little defensive head movement. But a lot of times he was getting hit. And that's the reason he suffered knockout losses in 2014. And, now it's just that the defensive movements are much more limited. The reaction time is a lot slower. The durability is not there. And, the difference for me here is just that Victor Henry, as opposed to somebody like Ricky Simone and Cody Garbrandt, he is much more apt to mix up his martial arts. Like I said, catch as catch can. If he can wrap you up in a submission, he will. He's not afraid to do that. I thought he nearly got Raoni Barcelos out of there, blasting away with those shots against the fence. Had a lot of volume in that spot, had a lot of, aggression, controlled the range, controlled the pace, just did everything beautifully. It's a beautiful fight to rewatch as well. Fantastic fighter, Victor Henry. And I just think that he's a much fresher guy here. I think this is a showcase spot. I think this might be, the retirement fight for Raphael Assunao. I think this might be, a sign off for the legend. Maybe a couple guys meet that fate, unfortunately. That's the fight game. It's a vicious, brutal game. But it's not built for the old. It is built for the young. And Victor Henry's not young, but he's a little bit younger in terms of fight years. He looks so much closer to his prime. He looks so much more fast and dynamic. His reactions looked impeccable against Barcelos. And you see this guy take a punch clean on the chin, and he no sells it, man. It's insane. The guy just has a very freakish level of durability from everything I've seen. He's not easy to get out of there by any means, and I just don't see the current version of Assunao being the guy to get that done. So respect to the legend, but I think this is Victor Henry inside the distance, and I would not be surprised if he locks in a submission here. I think that we could see an errant shot, that costs Raphael Assunao, because like I mentioned, he's not really like a Ricky Simone who's gonna, see that you're kind of hurt and then bomb you with these huge power shots. Victor Henry's gonna touch, and be the guy who takes you away with 1,000 cuts. And if you don't like how it's going, you always have an exit strategy, which is you could shoot your way into that deep guillotine, that triangle choke series, and he'll wrap you up and get you out of there, give you a free pass to go home. And when you're potentially looking at that 1 foot out the door, or just being rocked, hurt, wobbled, getting in to wild scrambling exchanges with somebody who's a little bit more fresh and dynamic, I just think it all spells disaster, unfortunately, for Raphael Assunao. So I'm leaning with Victor Henry in the spot. He is a prospect to watch in the bantamweight division, despite his age. Don't let age fool you in that case. He's a young 35, and he's dangerous. Guys don't want to fight Victor Henry right now. And he is minus 400. According to our friends at Oddsjam, you could get that at PointsBet, and the comeback of plus 300 you could also get at PointsBet. So PointsBet doing it right in terms of their spread there on the Assunao and Henry bout. Now, the next fight on the card, I'm actually seeing as well, you can get as low as a minus 375 on FanDuel Sportsbook, and you can get as high as a plus 330 comeback on Assunao on Pinnacle on some of the sharper markets. So, just something, again, that we're noticing a little bit of that trend, the best available price on the dogs in some of these cases being on the very sharp markets like Pinnacle Sportsbook. Now, next up, guys, we've got a prelim headliner, interestingly enough, between two guys that can't buy a win in the UFC. I'm half kidding, of course, but we got Martinez taking on Brandon Davis here. And, I was running numbers for a lot of the fights on this card and just, kind of trying to conceptualize these guys, their pro win record, their UFC win rate, just a couple of these, broader numbers to just give me a picture of where they're at. And these guys stood out as some of the worst fighters on the card in terms of their UFC results, man. Just can't buy a win. Like Brandon Davis comes back, 4-fight win streak on the regional scene. Didn't look stellar in those fights, but did enough, did the job, did what he was told to do, go get some wins, come back. Okay, here he is. And, it was like target practice with Denab Bakary. I just rewatched that fight before I got on the stream. Boy, oh boy, the defense wasn't there. The offense was pretty muted. There was nothing to like about that performance, unfortunately. And there was no aggressive grappling. There was no offensive sequences. There really wasn't much to buy into, unfortunately, on the Brandon Davis side. And now for Martinez, what's the downside? What's going to hold you back here from laying the chalk? I can't trust this guy off his back. His own durability could be called into question. He's been hurt, rock dropped in the past by guys who aren't known punchers, but he's got a money left hook. He's just really good at throwing the left hook. It's tight. He throws it hard. It lands with authority. He's put a couple of guys down bad with that punch. Could I really see Brandon Davis getting out of the way of the left hook here? Based on that last performance, I'm not confident in that. He's also coming off a surgical repair of his knee. I forgot to mention it earlier, but CJ Vergara, he's had multiple surgeries, on several body parts, to my understanding. He's also the much older fighter there. That's something I keep in the back of my mind as, maybe that's going to rear its ugly head at some point. And now when we're talking about this fight, Brandon Davis, very recent surgery, still looking like he's in post-op recovery. How is his knee going to hold up if he tries to wrestle, if he tries to grapple? How is his knee going to hold up if he's absorbing low kicks, from a guy who looks to me like he's willing enough to throw them? And then additionally, how's he going to deal with that left hook? How's he going to deal with the power? How's he going to deal with his movement? How's he going to deal with the speed deterioration? There's a lot of open questions, and frankly, he went out there in a similar odds range in his last fight, around the plus 130 tag or so, and he got absolutely nuked in the first round. So there's reason to be skeptical, frankly, of both these sides, but it seems like the market is one way on the Mana Martinez side, and the bookmakers aren't showing it as much respect as I would assume they would. I would think that if this much of the market is coming in one way on the Mana Martinez side, they would move to maybe closer to minus 200 or so, and we're not seeing that. So I do think that's a little bit telling. Maybe the book has an opinion of their own on this fight, and maybe that's something worth respecting. Maybe they know a little bit more about the Brandon Davis side and his recovery, for example. They could have access to coaches, inside sources, all the fun things that we love about the sports book. They're inherent advantages. But guys, we have a main card to talk about now. That was the featured prelim. I think that Mana Martinez is going to get it done by knockout, probably in the very first round, but I have very little confidence backing either one of those fighters. So it's a prop or pass for me. And as of now, I'm leaning towards a plain old pass. The next fight on the card here, Misha Cirkunov and Alonzo Menefield. Boy, oh boy. Two fighters I do not like to bet on, folks. I did successfully fade Alonzo Menefield with my boy OSP. Washed to bits. That's like the last good win we might get from him. But I took that one there. I was happy to cash that ticket. But I also have been looking to get on the other side of Misha Cirkunov or just leave his fights alone entirely. The 185 run, I've left it alone entirely. And I was on the under for the Ryan Spann fight, but I was also on Misha Cirkunov, man. I thought he was going to win that fight. And when he lost to Ryan Spann, I said, that's it. I'm done betting Misha Cirkunov forever. So it does make my betting considerations here very simple and straightforward. I have one guy who I said I'd never bet on again after a terrible performance. So I'm probably not going to bet on Misha Cirkunov. I would agree with people that identify he's probably the sharp side here. I'm never betting on Alonzo Menefield at chalk, period. I'm just not doing it. This is a guy that's basically given up rounds before by cage pushing for the duration of the bout. And then William Knight didn't land a single strike, but chased after him with violent intentions. And that was literally enough to sway the judges' minds because Alonzo did nothing. He just pressed him into the fence and leaned on him. There was no attempt at offense. There was no aggression. There was no violence. I don't think he has great cardio. I don't think he's got great staying power. But why am I not running to the window to bet on Misha Cirkunov with this big plus money number? Misha Cirkunov is stiff as a board. Misha Cirkunov looks incredibly uncomfortable every time he fights. Misha Cirkunov makes really boneheaded mistakes as a grappler that you'd never expect him to make. I thought that he looked completely desperate in round 2 to get that takedown because he was exhausted. He was tiring out against Wellington Turman, and then Wellington Turman's able to pull off the easiest hip transition armbar, and he taps basically before he gets an opportunity to even try and stack or anything. It was honestly kind of crazy to me for a grappler of that level to get caught like that. So for me, that had to have been a function of either damage sustained or fatigue. I think that he's fragile. I think that he doesn't have great cardio. I think that the same is true of Alonzo Menefield. So I get why people are on the unders, but two fragile guys, that are both really uncomfortable. Could you guys really not see this turning into a clinch fest where they both hold on to each other desperately for dear life and just circle into the fence and do 100 laps like that? I could definitely see that. So for me, no play on the total, no play on the money lines, no play on the sides, nothing for me here. I get people wanting to get a little bit cute with it and look for props or even that underdog price on Cirkunov. Like I said, I think he's the side if you want to get involved, but I want to stay true to myself, man. I said I'd never bet the guy again. I meant it. I'm never betting this damn guy again. His durability at 205 has been a real big problem. I would agree with Isaiah that his cardio at 185 was a huge problem. Maybe we see some improvements in the cardio, but I think that the stiffness is really a function of anxiety. I don't think he's a comfortable fighter. I think he's extremely uncomfortable when he's out there. I think that that's always been true. Win, loss, indifferent. And so I wish him the best, but I just don't believe in his long-term upside. I think that he is very, very red flagged for me based on cardio, durability, heart, staying power, all these kind of things. I have so many questions right now that I'd need to see a lot from Misha in terms of, closing the gap on these guys and really, showing some documented, clear improvement before I could get back on the train. Now, with that being said, he's also got a 15-8 professional record, going up against 12-3 Alonzo Menefield. Menefield, much better record in the UFC as well, 7-3 compared to 6-6 for Misha Cirkunov. Now, granted, Misha's been fighting the better levels of competition, but the numbers are the numbers. He doesn't win very much. He's a 500 fighter in the UFC, and if he goes below 500 here, with how much he's getting paid, I don't know that they're going to keep him around. And on the other side, you got Alonzo Menefield here, not as young as people would think, like 34 and a hook, approaching his 35th birthday. This is kind of a shitter get off the pot fight at 205 in terms of contendership, in terms of, moving up the ranks in the top 15. And that's how I feel about this fight. So clear pass for me. Best of luck. Light heavyweight's a division I've had great success betting on. This is a fight I don't even have a strong opinion one way or the other, but I would lean towards Menefield nuking him in the first round. Next up, guys, we've got Dusko Todorovic taking on Jordan Beverly Hills Ninja Wright. This is another one that is, reminiscent of Jordan Wright's last fight, where I said to myself, maybe Jordan Wright's live here. He hits pretty hard. He comes out in that first round. He could swing. We just saw this guy get knocked out. He's trying to make the quick turnaround. Maybe the Beverly Hills Ninja ships it for the boys. Was not to be, right? He gets submitted there, gets choked out pretty quickly. Pretty routine fashion there from MAB, not known for his grappling chops, not known as a prodigious, submission hunter or something like that. So that for me is not a good sign in terms of his long-term upside. Also a loss in the first round again, not really able to show staying power in these fights, not able to show great poise and composure. Not able to show a great chin. He's been hurt, rocked, dropped in a couple of these fights as well. Granted, a couple big punchers, but, Fluffy Hernandez, not really known for being a huge power puncher, dropped him in the very early going there. Same can be said. Bruno Silva just got outboxed by Gerald Meerschaert in some universe. And, I'm telling you, man, Gerald Meerschaert never gets enough credit for his striking, but still, that's the kind of thing that, I can't imagine Jordan Wright being a successful UFC fighter long-term. He doesn't have great cardio. He doesn't have many paths to victory. I feel like he's pretty finish reliant. Dusko, on the other hand, can win a decision. He can have these grindy, grappling-based fights where he sticks his head under your head, pushes you into the fence, and just goes body work and, looks to rip shots to the body. He's a defensive liability. Both these guys, it stands out about their game that they have really undisciplined hand position. They're reckless with their striking. They do a bunch of crazy shit that's negative EV. They throw crazy kicks and jumping this and, they just do things that are fun and attention seeking. And this was Dana White's, like, if you don't know, now you know, right? And he's talking about, Jordan Wright, he's never in a boring fight because it always finishes. It's like he doesn't mention that the guy's 2-4. It's just like they always finish and he normally loses in brutal fashion. And Dusko, he fits a lot of the things that the UFC wants to promote, global expansion of MMA, guy who has multiple martial arts backgrounds, guy who can mix it up, go for takedowns, can fight you on the feet, can swang and bang, not afraid to get in a fight, not afraid to kill or be killed, right? I just think Dusko probably has more paths to victory, more actual upside, better cardio. He's shown he can go into the second and third round. We don't really see that from the Beverly Hills Ninja very often. So for me, there's nothing really to say that Beverly Hills Ninja is going to make some huge turnaround here. But it is a low enough level fight that I could see him winning. That's just the shocking thing about this fight card, and why I said it was a little bit tepid as a fight card. These are main card bouts, and they're really just action fights. And I like action fights. They can be fun, they can be exciting, but they don't have great divisional stakes. This is like what the 55th and the 60th best middleweights or what. It's like you're really just operating at a much lower level of the UFC in terms of the talent pool than some of the other bouts that I look forward to as a fan and analyst and somebody who's looking to bet on these fights, because I like to trust my money with people that are a little bit more reliable, a little bit more proven, a little bit more of a track record, or they've got tremendous upside. A lot of these guys have neither. So for me, another pass spot. I do think it's going to be a violent one, but I won't put it past them to have an ugly Dusko Todorovic third round, volley type finish. I think it would probably be ground and pound more likely than anything. Now, the co-main event of the evening is another fight that is giving me fits. And I'll tell you why. So we have a tricky fight here. I think that Jonathan Martinez is somebody I have not been anxious to get on the team with, right? I did bet him 1 unit plus 120 against Almeida, against Thomas Almeida. I did fade Almeida in that spot. But I also bet Zviad Lasishvili or whatever the hell that guy's name was against Martinez. So I'm really not a Martinez guy long term. Davy Grant knocking him out is like one of my favorite highlights in the UFC. No disrespect, just straight up, gotta love this guy, Davy Grant. He's an absolute barnyard banger. Nothing he does makes any sense, but it's awesome. And talk about an action fighter worth watching, Davy Grant. Go back and watch his highlight reel. The guy's fun as all heck. But that being said, guys, we got Jonathan Martinez here looking to bounce back from that. He's starting to build some momentum. He's starting to get some wins under his belt. And so one of the things the UFC likes to do is take an old legend and put him up against a guy who's starting to build some momentum, but we don't really know what we have here. That means that the legend has a chance to win. That means that the guy on the come-up has a chance to win, the young buck. Cub Swanson is a much sharper puncher, in my opinion, than Jonathan Martinez. He hits pretty hard, but there's a variable in this fight that I don't know I don't make heads or tails of it, right? Cub Swanson, for the first time in years, many, many years, is dropping to 135 pounds. And he did look like the bigger fighter on the scales, not by a tremendous amount. Keep in mind, Jonathan Martinez is a guy who struggled routinely to make the 135-pound limit. So both these guys at 135, they had a very intense stare down, but I just have to assume that Jonathan Martinez has more to give at this stage of their career. I really do. He has some defensive flaws. He's not, as potent a puncher, certainly, as somebody like Cub Swanson. And maybe the skill gap is just too big for Martinez to overcome. But I have a feeling that Martinez is the guy who's more likely to have made improvements since the last time we've seen him. He's the guy who's been accruing a lot more consistent octagon time. And on top of that, Cub Swanson, historically a little bit softer to the body. This is a guy who's going to punt you in the body. He's going to throw the teep kicks up the middle. He's going to look to low kick as well. He's just going to do some things that recent opponents have been having success with. Pineda landed a lot of clean low kicks on Cub in the short time that fight lasted. So for me, I just feel like if you don't have a cardio checkout, or you're not, just running onto every strike and getting completely butchered, Unfortunately, again, all respect to the legend Darren Elkins, but I did have a pretty sizable position on Cub Swanson to win that fight by knockout, and it just seemed like a setup fight there. Whereas I wonder in this fight, are they setting him up for failure, or success? I think they're setting him up for an honest fight. That's what it looks like to me. They're trying to give Cub a fight that he could win, but the physical realities are the physical realities. He's been finished a number of times. He's been on the ropes in a couple other fights where he was able to claw his way back. How many of those does he have left in the tank at this age, at this stage of his career? And I think we've also seen now a number of examples of guys that cut down in weight and the durability goes out the window. Frankie Edgar, historically extremely difficult to finish, crazy recoverability, durability, starts getting deaded with one shot at 135, I think that those are the kind of things that give me some pause backing these older fighters. I remember I bet Cub against Giga Chikadze because I thought that was a decent chance that he could come through. And, man, just got blasted out there, one kick, and that's all she wrote. So, again, just – I got horror stories. I got flashbacks of betting Cub, a little bit past prime, and I'm not going to let that happen to me again. For me, my favorite angle here was just the ends by knockout. It was like plus 150. I'm not sure what it's hanging right now, but for me, both these guys clearly have some durability issues. Both these guys are looking to exchange strikes in this fight, I would think. So for those reasons, I feel like there's a chance either guy could win the fight by knockout pretty easily. And there's going to be 15 minutes for it to happen. So for me, I kind of like that. It's a little bit more plus money than the unders and the fight not to go and those kind of numbers. So I just kind of like that look for the co-main event of the evening. I think that it could easily end inside the distance. And shout out to Not in the AM, bro. Is this live? This is a live show, my friend, and we are just about to pull up to this main event of the evening. So I'm so glad that you're asking. I just want to say, guys,
what's up, sports bettors? I'm going to show you how you can make money sports betting. Big profits, sports betting, big wins. And the way to do it is positive EV betting. Of course, I'm not promising you're going to win every single bet. But when you're finding bets with a mathematical edge, such as Steelers plus 2.5 at plus 100, when the sharpest sports books are pricing it at minus 115, you're guaranteed to make money in the long run due to the law of large numbers. Here's another one. Twins Royals over 4.5, minus 105 odds. You got to be on this bet. Look at this. Two sharpest sports books are pricing this minus 130, minus 123. This is a true pricing discrepancy. We're essentially finding a bet on sale. You're getting insane value at minus 105 odds, so this bet has a 3.84% profit margin. If you're actually trying to become a sharp, profitable sports bettor and make a lot of money betting on sports, you need to be finding positive EV bets, bets with an edge, positive EV bets that have a mathematical edge over the sports book, in place as many as you can. You're basically forming your own hedge fund of mathematically profitable bets.
And it's just that simple, guys. So I do this in my own life. I'm a sports bettor. I like to bet on sports, right? And whether it's the UFC or it's some other sport, right? I like to bet on anytime touchdowns. I go through Oddsjam. I go through and I look at the odds. I compare different sports books and I decide where is the best place for me to bet it. Because if I can get plus 400 where I could get plus 300 elsewhere, the ROI difference is substantial. Why would I leave money on the table? It's just foolish. So I think every odd service that you can have access to that's free is beneficial to you. But Oddsjam has a ton more to offer. No big odds calculators and a ton more. So go check out the site. All the information you need is in the description box below. And I really appreciate you guys checking out the sponsors that help make this possible. So thank you guys very much. And with that being said, it's 3:24 here in the East. I still got all the energy I need to break down this main event of the evening. We've got 125 pounds, Alexa Grasso, Vivianne Araujo. And a lot of times, guys, I get on these shows and I tell you it is time to stop Brazilian hate. And this week, I'm just not so sure. For me, This is a tricky fight to break down because against Andrea Lee, I was impressed by what I saw from Vivianne Araujo. She's very physical at 125 pounds. She showed some recoverability there, some heart, some toughness, some grit. She also was able to land some big shots of her own. She was able to get some dominant grappling positions. She does have her own grappling credentials and background. She's a little bit older in this spot, but she's got some power behind her strikes, which is important in WMMA. But Grasso's a little bit more fluid, right? She seems like the fighter who's on the come up, the fighter who's making these more substantial improvements each fight camp. And we're also seeing that she's really been putting in the work where I've seen her grappling improve over the course of her fight tape. She went from somebody who was really not trying to grapple, trying to disengage, to somebody who could be more threatening, who could look for a dangerous position, who could look to take the back, who could look, to set up better positions. And so for me, this is a fight where I don't have a play on the main event that backs a side. The reason being, it's a tricky fight for me. I think that in the early going, the grappling, the strength advantage, the wrestling advantage should go to Vivianne Araujo. However, I don't know that she has the pace to sustain it, and I don't know that she's as lethal in the finishing as she needs to be in order to put Grasso away. So it becomes this double-edged sword, in my opinion, where is it Grasso who's able to outlast her opponent? And, fatigue makes cowards of us all. Vivianne Araujo, if she uses those big muscles, if she spends herself in the early going and Grasso's able to outlast her, Grasso could be able to find the finish herself or to win the late rounds. But I do think there's a chance that Vivianne Araujo comes out here and wins early minutes because she's very powerful, because she's very physical. So I think that this is a good matchup. I'm not going to hate on this like a lot of people will. At 125 pounds, the women's division, it deserves some shine. There's a couple good fights coming up as well. Talking about Caitlin Chukagian taking on Menefield. That's a much better fight, but this is still a very compelling fight. This is a fight that's going to push somebody forward in the right direction. And I think it has a similar dynamic to Dern and Xiaonan. And let me explain what I mean. In Dern and Xiaonan, I tried to explain before the fight that I felt like people were riding Dern very aggressively leading up to the fight. Now, in that case, I was much more bullish on a Yan bet than I am on an Araujo bet this week. But that's just because I felt like Yan had a lot of the bases that I needed covered. I felt like her cardio checked out. I felt like her striking checked out. I felt like her willingness to improve checked out. As soon as she lost the fight to Esparza, she got on a plane, moved to the States, and started improving her grappling full time. Granted, she did it at Team Alpha Male, but it worked out for her, so shout out. In this spot, I'm curious to see the interplay of the grappling between these two ladies. I do think in the early going it will favor Araujo, and I think there'll be chances that she submits Grasso, who has been submitted in the past, who has been dominated on the mat before. But I also think there's a chance that Grasso could outlast her, be a little more slick, be a little more savvy, a little less power-oriented, and maybe find something later in the fight. So for me, either one of these ladies to win by submission, they're very wide numbers. That's something that I was a little bit interested in. Again, trying to find these differentiators, these angles to take. I am not a guy who looks to just bet pure money lines, sides, totals. I mix it up. I look at derivative markets as well as major markets. And, I just think that in terms of the submission prices, sometimes you can find misprices in a market like this where you've got two women that are not known necessarily for finishing fights, but now they're being put in this new dynamic 5 rounds, 25 minutes to work, could create more finishing opportunities. It also could lead to them pacing themselves. So I'm not getting out over my skis here with confidence, but I do think it's at least an interesting angle to target. And just wanted to address this extremely briefly, but you ask, not in the AM, bro, can you go over the library drama? I don't know that there's any drama to be had. Library's not on Twitter anymore. I think he's doing something with Saul on another platform. So you'd be, best off to inquire with them about whatever services they're offering. But yeah, I wish them well. Haven't spoken to them as much lately. If there's a Twitter space or something, happy to hop on it and speak with everybody. But yeah, as far as I'm concerned, just everybody's doing their own thing. And I'm going to continue to do what I do. Always have, do my own work, my own research as well. And got a lot of notes, a lot of effort, energy, time, and that I put into this. So extremely excited about the future. We've got a pay-per-view card coming up that is stacked from top to bottom. A lot of great fights. I think a lot of very potent betting opportunities as well. So for me, I'm extremely excited about the future, about these UFC cards that are upcoming. So if you guys are looking for more content from me, go ahead and get yourself subscribed to the channel. Go ahead and like this video. It helps me out tremendously. Let a friend know about the show. Tell people that you're enjoying this. If you guys have been tailing along from the beginning of the year, we've been doing extremely well on the year. All my results track third party at betmma.tips. Also, Delphi Sports, that's the brand. And guys, we've been doing a great job. The commish, in terms of his profitability streak, just insanity. I think he finally broke at 14 days in a row. We have obviously a much different market in MMA, only have Saturdays most of the time to get our real betting action and our betting interest down. But, somebody that's covering major markets and just absolutely crushing it. So shout out to my guy, Delphi Commish, always got his back. And shout out to each and every one of you guys. I say it every week. Sharpest chat in the game, always on my YouTube channel. Guys, if you want more specific content from this channel, go ahead and let me know what you want to hear more from. Drop a comment below what your favorite bet is on this card. I'm happy to hear from you guys. And I'm happy to share if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, or thoughts on the upcoming matchups and you wanted to discuss. My name is Liam. I pick fights each and every week. I hope you guys will come back next week. We're going to have all the same fun again and something to look forward to. If you guys are longtime listeners, we're having the Four Horsemen panel show come back. My man Gordo Gambles, Wiz Bets, Lou Betcha, all of them in the house. Going to be breaking down the pay-per-view. Going to be having a silly goose time, of course. A lot of fun, a lot of great cappers, a lot of great information, and we're really going to bring the heat because it's a pay-per-view. It's a great week to be a fight fan. So God bless you all. I hope that you enjoy the fights. I wish you the very best of luck on all your betting action. Get subscribed, like the channel, share it with a friend. Come back next week. We'll have all the same fun again. Take care, everybody.